Umberto was doing a study looking at corticosteroids in ARDS. He was blinded to the results, and his study was shut down because he was essentially accused of scientific misconduct.
Yeah.
Because the agencies or the pharmaceutical company did not want his study to be completed.
So let me go into the story, which is absolutely fascinating. So now the FDA approves the new drug, Zygris, okay? And a Wall Street Journal, a Pulitzer Prize winner, journalist from the Wall Street Journal, start to look into, because he wants to know about this drug more. And he talks with a lot of people, both in Europe and the United States, Canada, etc. And people say, hey, why don't you call Meduri? He has something to tell you. Because I was a proponent of steroids as an alternative to the one molecule treatment. Steroids, they just take care of almost 10,000 genes, not just one. They're very important. But anyway, so he calls me and he says, yes, I sent a letter to the FDA. I sent him a copy. I think that there is another study in France. I think there should be a comparison study, will be very important. It is possible that the combination works better either one alone, but we cannot just go out, and then there are serious risk of this treatment. So he say, okay, he calls more people, and then he sends me an email or phone call, I forgot now. I say, look, I want to come and visit you. So I announced the visit, the Wall Street Journal, is to our research group that meets once a week. And the news went out. So now they're getting ready. Long story short, he comes, he spent 3 days with us. He wrote a beautiful article and comparing drug company versus, off-patent, inexpensive treatment that gets no support, wants a ton of money that goes to the other side, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then he goes back. He calls me a couple of questions for clarification. I show to him the new study that we have completed and submitted for publication that goes into the cellular mechanism of steroids and for the first time explain why they work so well, okay, in taking care of downregulating. He used that in the Wall Street Journal picture that is in the journal once it was published, and now he published. Okay, front page. I was shocked. It was front page. I get letters from the 2 senators, NIH director.
Maybe you should tell what the title of his paper was.
Okay.
The title of his article is really important.
Okay. Why cheap drugs that appear to halt fatal sepsis go unused? Steroids need big human trials, but pharmaceutical makers lack incentive to find one. Dr. Meduri, 15 years quest. So that's the copy of the article. And it's very well written. And actually, but something happened. Within a few days of a publication, my research program was shut down. Shut down. There is a positive trial that needs to be submitted for complete the analysis submitted for publication. There is the largest blood specimen repository of this kind in the world shut down. So I know nothing about this. They call me from the foundation that supported the study. One in the video tell you, hey, Umberto, and the foundation was interviewed and is also in the journal by the journalist. The chancellor of the university called the foundation, tell you're under investigation for scientific misconduct to stop all funds. I said, what? I knew nothing about this. This is complete news. I called the chancellor. The chancellor was a great person, an ethical person. He got misled, okay, by the one that directed all this. They work under him. Anyway, if the chancellor tell you mean you don't know this? No, I never heard about this before. I never heard the word scientific misconduct investigation. So I go to the Office of Research Integrity website. I read all about the histories, and I call them back. Hey, you did all wrong. You cannot do this. Well, it's already done. Long story short, I was submitted to misconduct. There is a lot of things. The university lawyer then took over this. under my request. He will later be disbarred, but anyway, he was in charge of this. And they delayed the closure of the investigation to achieve a statute of limitation. Why? Because in between, I discovered a host of things that were absolutely amazing. A completely departure from any ethical, moral, professional it's amazing. What they have done was absurd. I say, I couldn't believe this. So they delay, and then 2-3 days before the statute of limitation, they met with me actually 2-3 weeks before. They said there is no misconduct. We found some errors that needs to be corrected, something like that. Actually, I told you, look, you don't know what was not true anyway, but anyway. And then with my lawyer was there, and then they wait for 2-3 days before, after they told that there was no misconduct, after they told the document of the analysis there is no misconduct, and the lawyer say, now you have to sign a waiver of liability that you will not take any action against the university. And I said, this is ridiculous. What are you talking about? You threaten me now? After all this, you also threaten me? And so I talked to my lawyer. My lawyer replied, you're crazy, guys. You cannot do this. Guess what happened? That night, they met. At night, they removed all the evidence that I submit in my favor. They've changed and removed all the stuff, and they fabricated misconduct. Okay?
After you had already been exonerated?
After they told to me and my lawyer there is nothing. They changed everything that night after I refused to sign a waiver of liability.
So let me see if I understand the story. You are favorably covered in a story, Wall Street Journal, is that right?
Yes.
And the Wall Street Journal says, the title again was something like Why Drugs That Successfully...
Cheap drugs that appear to halt fatal sepsis go unused.
Why drugs that appear to halt fatal sepsis go unused, covered in the Wall Street Journal prominently. Front page, was it?
Yes.
And days later, out of nowhere, with no hint that anyone has leveled any allegation against you about scientific misconduct, you find that your research is threatened. An investigation finds no evidence that you have engaged in any misconduct. They come up with some, small observations, which of course would be findable in anything. You can come up with, the research is hard. There are little errors to be corrected all over the place, but they come up with something to save face. They tell you you've been exonerated. They demand that you sign a waiver of liability to prevent you from holding them responsible for damage done to your reputation. You refuse to sign because, of course, why would you?
Yeah.
They meet at night, remove the evidence that you submitted in your defense, and reinstate the accusation or maybe the finding of
so they can make up with all this misconduct stuff. They made up stuff. This is amazing. Yeah.
What kind of misconduct were they alleging?
Some reporting of improvement. The question was equal or more versus more only. Stupidity. And a couple of other little things. I'd be happy to post this online anytime. The interesting thing is that the chancellor was a decent guy. The dean calls me, okay? First of all, I was out of town. They mandate a meeting in which they inform all my fellows, and then in a separate day, all the faculty, that I was guilty, and they read to them all the punishment that I was subjected to. They never called me. I was out of town. Now I'm back. I go to the dean. The dean reads everything. You have to retract all your prior publication on steroids. You have to stop this ongoing study on steroids. Okay? And then a few other little things that are irrelevant. And then I was shocked. I was completely shocked. I took my glasses off. I told the dean, look at my eyes. And I say, I've done nothing wrong. This is life-saving treatment. The truth will come out. The guy turned pale and started shaking, and I left the office. Okay? I refused to upset the disciplinary action. I went with my lawyer and said, there is only one way to save this research. We have to go to court. So that's what we did. If I would have let them do what they wanted to do, today there will be no knowledge about steroids for COVID. Okay? They would have succeeded in achieving what they wanted, but they didn't. I tried to bring attention to the federal organization that is responsible for supervising all this, but they've done nothing. The ORI, Office of Research Integrity, is run with a complete lack of professionalism. They don't care about what happened to folks that are falsely accused. There are even articles in New England Journal of Medicine telling them, hey, you need to improve what you do, but they don't do it. A bunch of, I have no positive comments on that organization.
Okay, so an observation or two, and forgive me for this, but I believe this is the proper use of such terms. What we are doing.
Could I just intervene? So,
please.
What was interesting was the person who reported Umberto to the dean or his administration for scientific misconduct. It was the statistician who was overlooking his study, who knew the results of his study. Umberto was blinded, so he didn't know. The statistician knew the results and falsely accused Umberto of scientific misconduct, which is truly astonishing.
That is truly astonishing.
Let me say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
She was forced to. So, behind the scene, once the Wall Street Journal came to visit us, behind this scene, people that before the statistician put all this together. All what was missing is somebody to come and bring charges. Everything else was ready. She came there and say, I don't have any charge of misconduct. So what I told her, you will bring charges of misconduct and we will control the process. Okay? This is testimony. Okay? In our litigation, we have all this information. And they did control the process. And I'm telling you only minor details, but they completely disregarded every rules regulation, both of state and federal regulation.
Was she not guaranteed some kind of promotion if she went through with this?
The one in charge of inquiry that I have to, so one person involved was promised a promotion that happened with a salary increase, of course.
And how was the statistician incentivized to trump up?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you, this sounds, the more I hear about it, like mafia tactics, right? In essence, if you are a scientific researcher who wishes to continue to be a scientific researcher, you have to pay a protection racket to support you. And in this case, the payment isn't a financial one, but you have to support the narrative that results in the drug that pays, sailing through evaluation, comparison to cheaper, better drugs, all of that things. And all of those things, if you depart from this by studying the actual question of what's in the interest of patients, and you insist on publishing it, and then this gets noticed in such a way that it will actually affect what is being prescribed, then they come after your reputation and they interfere with your ability to continue your research. They interfere with the flow of money that allows research to happen. And they will threaten, intimidate in some way people who are working with you to betray you, presumably to save themselves. And lo and behold, you end up facing charges of misconduct. Now, I would point out, this isn't limited to research scientists. In fact, the three people involved in this podcast have all had a version of this happen. Umberto, you have had phony charges of research misconduct brought against you. Paul, congratulations. You have recently been completely vindicated of a vile accusation of scientific fraud that was leveled by, what's his name? Sheldrick?
Kyle Sheldrick.
Kyle Sheldrick, a despicable human being who went after your good name as a doctor, and again, completely exonerated, as you were, Umberto. And if you will go to my Wikipedia page, you'll find that pharma shills have made me sound like a terrible person who's distributed medical misinformation with no thought to how it would affect people's health. It's the same story everywhere. All you have to do is what you were trained to do, to evaluate evidence, to practice medicine, to conduct scientific research. If you do any of these things and it creates a problem for these pharmaceutical companies, then it is your ability to continue to do the job for which you trained that will be threatened. Your reputation will be destroyed publicly. You will be humiliated. It's the same pattern. Am I wrong that this is just simple mafia intimidation tactics dressed up in lab coats?
No different. This is mafia tactics. You're right, Bret.
Yeah, and you know, the fact that the public does not understand that the very people it should be listening to are the people who are being accused on the basis of no evidence of these things. That's exactly who you want to listen to. Do I want steroids if I have ARDS downstream of COVID or some other condition? Do I want to listen to a chorus of doctors who are easily intimidated into prescribing some alternative drug? Or do I want to listen to the person being slandered by his own university over research misconduct that they can't prove because it doesn't exist? It's as obvious as it's as plain as day.
And what's worse is the regulatory agencies, which should be regulating the activities of Big Pharma, are basically collaborators and co-conspirators with them, so that Big Pharma has there are no checks and balances. They can really do what they want to do. And the regulatory agencies who should be regulating these companies are actually on the payroll of Big Pharma.
That's true. And again, I cannot get away from this idea about the coup against medicine, because I know none of this would be possible if doctors were just simply left alone to practice medicine, right? If doctors were simply left alone to practice medicine, then they would know that there was a controversy about steroids. They would try giving steroids to patients who were threatened by ARDS. They would discover that it worked. And even if they didn't publicly say anything, they would privately say, look, you don't want that expensive drug. I'm going to give you this one, and we'll see how that goes. The information would bubble up naturally in a grassroots medical discovery of the kind that used to exist, as opposed to having every conceivable centralizing force in science and medicine all selling a phony story about novel drugs that, you know, it's the same time and time again. Not only is this a novel drug that we cannot know the full range of hazards that come along with it, but the likelihood that it is better than the well-known drug that interferes in a safe way in a system that, you know, does not require a precisely targeted drug. The fact that steroids work generally on inflammatory symptoms that have gotten out of control means you found the thing you were looking for. You're not actually looking for a new drug. It's pharma that's looking for a new drug because they can't make money on the one that exists.
That's it.
Right? It's a very clear story, and who knows how many drugs this is repeated over. Yes, Umberto.
So I want to let you know what happened. So finally, everything went to the Office of Research Integrity, an organization that I highly dislike and incompetent, but they found no misconduct. We sent all the data set. The statistician was so impressed with the results. So I was cleared by the Office of Research Integrity. But the university refused to accept that. Okay? Now, finally, the good chancellor comes back. He was gone for 1 year. And when he was coming back, everybody was concerned because they knew he was going to clear me. I was fortunate enough to have two individuals, one at the NIH and one in Rome, Italy, that heard the story. Okay, he gathered 50 of the leading investigators worldwide, including many that were editor of journals, to write a letter to the president of the university. And finally, that allowed me, the university got two additional independent reviewers. They found that everything was just right. Actually, they were complimentary about the study. And they finally cleared me. However, that did not stop Eli Lilly at his headquarters to tell all their rep that I was under this investigation for misconduct. And so the news that I was under investigation for misconduct was spread all across the globe. People will call me from Europe and other countries. And that brought a sort of questioning the positive study that comes out from Memphis. Okay? And the results are very clear. There was no randomized study from 2002, when this was finished, to 2020. No randomized study in the United States or in Europe. And then finally, in 2020, we had one from Spain, just before the COVID-19, and a few years before, there was one from Thailand. That's it. Nobody will ever talk. You go to national meeting, they don't talk about steroids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it had consequences. Everybody questioned the validity of the data.
So it's just so utterly maddening because on the one hand, what's downstream of this is a lot of patients for whom we have a treatment that works, and they're not going to get it because of things that happen at conferences where some sort of a whisper campaign that was never validated by anything that the tribunal that met to test the question found against you. But the accusation was enough. The fact is, it is possible to ruin a career and to block the discoveries that were made during that career by creating a phony impression with a simple accusation that apparently pharma has enough influence to set in motion, right? That is the long and short of this.